Let's take you live to the funeral where President Ramaphosa is giving the eulogy.
Legislatures, leadership of the national and provincial houses of traditional and Khoisan leaders, leaders of various political parties, and especially the governing party here in the Eastern Cape, the African National Congress, leadership of Contralesa, senior traditional leaders present, local government representatives as represented by executive mayors as well as councillors, members of the judiciary and Chapter 9 institutions present here, members of the diplomatic corps, leaders of religious and business sectors present here, officers and members of our South African National Defence Force, Molweni, Dumelang, Sanbonan, Abshen, Nemasiari. Awu nilahlekile ke ngoku. amaMpondo amahle nilahlekile ke ngoku. Sidibane apha namhlanje ngexesha elinzima kakhulu. Ixesha elinzima kakhulu kumafaku nakwizinkokheli zethu zemvelo kunye nesizwe samaMpondo kunye futhi nosapho lwasebukhosini. Obu bunzima esikubo ngoku buviwa nangabanye abantu balapha eMzantsi Afrika. Izinhliziyo zethu zibuhlungu kukuswelekelwa ngukumkani uZanozuko. Tunina nonke amafaku sithi receive our deepest condolences during this very difficult time for your family, for your clan, and indeed for the Pondo nation. You are not alone in your sorrow. Our nation as a whole wishes you strength and peace in this very difficult time. This is indeed a sad and difficult day, a devastating loss for the family, the nation, and the institution of traditional leadership. When we received the news of the illness of His Majesty King Zanozuko, we believed that he would recover and continue with his duties of leading our people in this part of our country. Sadly, this was not to be. He left us in the prime of his life when we were still expecting much from him. When His Majesty King Zanozuko Sigao was confirmed a few years ago as the king, that occasion heralded a new era for the Pondo Kingdom. It held a promise of peace, a promise of unity, development and cooperation amongst the amaMpondo. Working with local government, civil society and his community, His Majesty immediately set about to implement development projects to advance the interests of our people in this area. he immediately took it upon himself to visit other kings to discuss issues of unity and development of our people here. When I visited this area in November last year, I met with His Majesty the King and other kings and traditional leaders and members of the communities around here. I met with the leadership of amaMpondo, aseKaugeni, and amaMpondo aseNyandeni. We discussed the need for effective consultation and all development programs in these areas. On the occasion of the launch of the Eastern Seaboard Development Initiative, I had the privilege of discussing this mega project with the King. Some 2 years ago, when I delivered the State of the Nation address, I spoke about our dreams to build cities. I spoke about our dreams to develop various parts of our country. We immediately saw great interest in this part of our country, and I was very humbled to realize that traditional leaders, King Zanozuko, King Damase, and many others, took the dream that we had articulated very seriously. And they said, we've got the most wonderful endowment in this part of the world, of the country, the eastern seaboard of this place, which can result in the building of a mega city. Deputy Minister, you were talking about the absence of cities in this area. I can testify to the fact that King Zanozuko and King Damase have had in their dreams the building of a city in this part of the world. And I do believe that it will be realized. I was very impressed and enriched by his vision of socio-economic development. He impressed me with his extensive analysis of the terrible conditions in which our people live in these parts of our country, conditions of underdevelopment, conditions of poverty and unemployment. He knew exactly what challenges exist in this area and the many opportunities and endowments we should use and capitalize on to improve our people's lives. The Eastern Seaboard Development Initiative proposes the establishment of a new coastal post-apartheid city covering parts of Alfred Nzo, Heri Gwala, O.R. Tambo, and Ugu district municipalities. This would be a development which would be cross-provincial borders, which would encompass KZN in the southern part, as well as the Eastern Cape, where we would be able to see a new development rising in that place. Kumkani Zanozuko appreciated the socio-economic impact of this initiative and how this initiative could benefit the impoverished and underdeveloped amaMpondo communities, as would also extend towards KZN and develop people in that part of our country. He took it upon himself to champion the Eastern Seaboard Development Initiative and started engaging other affected kingships, urging their support. King Zanozuko was passionate about involving communities as investors in the initiative through the land ownership that they have. To His Majesty, Local communities were the first investors in the initiative, whose views and interests should guide the process. With the Eastern Cape being one of the provinces with an extremely high unemployment and poverty rate, we counted on His Majesty's visionary leadership in this and many other projects to transform the socio-economic conditions of our people in this area. He was among those monarchs who were determined that economic development should not be confined to urban centers only in our country. He was one of those leaders who championed the Invest Rural Master Plan, a flagship project promoted by the National House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders. His Majesty's passing left many tasks unfinished and took from us a beacon of development, social norms, and values. We are called upon to take forward his mission. Ukumkani Sigao descended from a line of heroic leaders, such as Ukumkani Faku, who stood their ground against colonialists and invaders. They fought for their territory and their birthright, the land of our country. They fought for sovereignty and for the well-being of their people. This area has always been a site of struggle. Some of the most revered leaders of the anti-apartheid struggle, including giants like Isithalandwe, Oliver Reginald Tambo, came from this area. The Pondoland revolt of the 1960s against the Bantu authorities was a clear message of defiance against racial oppression. Many amaMpondo were killed, maimed, and imprisoned for their defiance. I also had the privilege of getting to understand the psyche of amaMpondo when I worked with many of them on the gold mines and the coal mines of our country. One of them, whom I got to know very well, was called Upala from this area, uNomazele. Niyamazi. uNomazele would come to the National Union of Mine Workers office. Athi kum, Silili, ndimxelele ukuthi ndinguCyril. Athi hayi, awungiyena uCyril, unguSilili wena. Athi kum, lamabhunu ayadelela, sizazivala ezimayini. And he would go back to the mine, afone ngo-10 ebusuku, athi Silili, ndivalile ishaft ngoku, akekho umuntu ozawuya emsebenzini. So it was a real privilege to get to work at close range with people from this area. They represented our struggle very well in wars and struggles where they ensured and struggled for development, justice, and equal opportunities for all. Since the time has come, no one should stand in the way of this development, which is the dividend of the freedom for which our heroes fought. Colonialism not only caused widespread dispossession and misery, colonialism also sought to distort the institution of traditional leadership in ways that we continue to experience, including through lingering succession disputes. Yet, despite the concerted effort by colonial rulers to distort the institution of traditional leadership, This institution has held firm and has continued to advance the interests of the people that it serves. Under our democratic constitution and with the progressive laws that we have enacted, the institution of traditional leadership is well positioned to support the economic and social empowerment of all South Africans. A true father of the nation, His Majesty reviled the migrant labor system, where some of his people, particularly men, had to leave their families behind and move to faraway places to seek employment. And he once said, "It is my hope and my dream that one day soon, my people will not be forced by poverty and desperation to travel for 1,000 kilometers from their homes to find work on the mines in places like Welkom and Rustenburg." He longed for a time when the sons and daughters of this area would find employment and other economic opportunities right here in this place, so that they can raise families in conditions of comfort, stability, and security. He longed for a time when their skills, energy, and effort would be put to good effect to build this area, but also to build this province. His Majesty knew the reality of that despite the importance and also despite the inadequate livelihoods that our people lived here, we needed to continue with the struggle for a better life for our people. His Majesty knew that development has to be engendered from within, from local communities, so that it can be sustainable. That is why His Majesty was so passionate about developing this area. He was indeed one of the very rare kings in our country who focused most of his attention on developmental issues. In his memory, we must continue with the development projects that he was involved in. We must give full effect to the district development model. His passion compounds the challenges before us. A few months ago, parts of the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal were ravaged by devastating floods, resulting in massive loss of life and infrastructure. We pay tribute to those who lost their lives, and we should commit in their memory that no project should be stalled as we work hard to develop our people. The devastating floods hit us when we were still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. It is important to emphasize that we are not yet fully out of danger. We must each take responsibility for our own health and the health of those near us. In this Youth Month, I urge all youth formations to take the message about ensuring that we are all vaccinated through to various constituencies and encourage our people to get vaccinated. 2 days before His Majesty's passing, the Communal Land Summit was held in Ekurhuleni. This summit dealt with the ownership of land by communities, land audits, and the conflict resolution mechanisms that need to be put in place to resolve various disputes. These are issues which His Majesty left us with, still grappling with all those issues, working closely with all traditional leaders, that we now need to resolve all these issues. His Majesty was a fervent champion of the fight against gender-based violence, as we have heard throughout this morning. And he did this by organizing Imbizos, amongst many other initiatives, to address this scourge. He was very much alive of the gender-based violence that continues at a very high rate in this area. This is a fight that we all need to take up, and we should take it up in his honor, because he was one of our champions in fighting against gender-based violence. In the same vein, we should also confront archaic practices such as ukutwala, which violate young girls and deprive them of education and other essential opportunities to create better futures for themselves. Through these efforts, we can help to restore the sanctity and tranquility of rural life and enhance the social cohesion which His Majesty so passionately embraced. Our traditional leaders are the custodians of our people's cultures, and in this time of mourning him, we know that some festivities and other functions are normally put on hold according to custom to observe the solemnness of this period. We appeal to our traditional leaders and elders who are here and all over the province to be watchful as the initiation season begins, because this is the time when we lose many of our young people at the initiation schools. As one of the speakers who spoke on this platform, we should not allow a situation where young men leave their homes walking on their 2 feet and coming back as corpses to their homes. We urge more vigilance against fake initiation schools so that we can save lives and preserve the integrity of this very important age-old practice and tradition. We will remember Umkani for many years. His name will continue to shine in the pantheon of the traditional leaders of this country who fought gallantly against dispossession and exploitation, who fought for a better life for all our people. Much as we are saddened by his untimely departure amongst us, a young king who still held so much promise of visionary leadership amongst our people, a young king who stood for unity, who stood for development, a young king who stood for progress. I have a sense that we have been robbed. Providence has robbed us of this young king who could still have contributed so much more to the development of our country. We can say that rather than mourn him today, we should use this occasion as a celebration of his short life. We should use this occasion also as an encouragement for us to do much better on the dreams that he had, dreams of development, dreams of improving the lives of our people in this part of our country. Umthi omkhulu uwile, sithi-ke lalani ngenxeba nina amaMpondo. Bofaku bonyawuza sithi singuhulumeni akwehlanga olungayifiyo. Sithi, be at peace as you remember him, as you mourn him, as you use his life as a great encouragement to go on with what he stood for. Ndiyabulela.